Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Gameweek 6 team selection where I could be doing anything from rolling the free transfer to playing my wildcard. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. If you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, let's do it. Let's jump into my Gameweek 6 team selection. And I did just want to make a comment because I've done a bit of self-reflecting around my FPL management and also my strategy at the moment. And for some of you, you literally won't care. You're just clicking on to see my team. So there'll be timestamps down below to the goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards, transfer plans, all of that lovely stuff. So if you're not interested in this first little bit, which will hopefully only be a couple of minutes, please feel free to skip along. But if you are following me on this journey, you guys will know I've not had a particularly good start to the season. I'm ranked at 3.5 million. I commented on the last couple of videos that I feel a bit lost with FPL. And so I decided to reflect, like, what is it for me that brings enjoyment with FPL? Well, first, it's the content creation, but I also realized that my enjoyment isn't intrinsically linked to my rank. There have been so many times in the past where I've had an absolutely brilliant rank. I think not last season, the season before that, I spent basically the entire season inside the top 10k. I wouldn't say I necessarily enjoyed the game much more. I loved, again, creating videos for you guys because that's my favorite part of it. But the game itself, I wouldn't say I enjoyed much more. There's pressure associated with it. And I know last season, when I was ranked at about, I think it was 3.2 million after game week 8, I then went on that really nice run, but I was still ranked around like 1,800,000, which for a content creator probably isn't a great rank. But that was arguably the most enjoyment I've ever had from the game. So I don't think my enjoyment for FPL is intrinsically linked to my rank. I think what brings me enjoyment in FPL is the manner in which I make my decisions. And I think recently, across the entirety of this season, I've been making decisions in such a timid way. I'm like tiptoeing around FPL and I'm being like, oh, I'm not sure if I should do this because what if someone comments this, or I'm not sure if I should make this transfer because it could backfire. That's not me. Like, you guys that have been watching my videos for so long, the one thing I can say about myself is I'm an incredibly confident decision maker in every aspect of my life, but also in FPL. I make decisions with like conviction, and I've lost that recently, and I hate that. And so I'm going to get back to that. I'm not saying that I'll make decisions blindly and I won't reflect in trying to improve my decision making, but I need to make decisions with a bit more confidence and conviction because I trust my own intuition. I trust my own decision making, and it won't always go well. But if you get into that manner where I make the decisions I'm happy with, I trust it, I'm confident with it, you tend to enjoy the game a little bit more. And so I want to stop tiptoeing around as much. And I'm not saying I don't want to ask for your guys' opinions, but I'm asking for your opinions so much that I'm genuinely like wanting help with my team. And as much as I'd love the help that you guys provide me, and please do comment down below what you would do with my team. I always appreciate it. I need to be a little bit more confident and own my decisions. And after having that reflection, I had this like, I feel rejuvenated around FPL. I really want to just approach the upcoming game weeks, and I'm feeling really happy again and excited for game week 6 and beyond because I'm making decisions that I'm happy with. So not everyone will be happy with my decisions this week, I can guarantee that. But in the most polite way to all the haters out there, I don't care. And to those of you that support me regardless, I appreciate you. So that's how I feel right now. And like I said, I feel a bit more excited and a bit more confident, and that's what I need. I'm not saying it will result in green arrows. I'm not saying I'll necessarily recover my rank straight away, but it's definitely the way that you should approach FPL. And by the way, before I do now move on to my team, not just for content creators, I promise you, or not promise you, I can almost guarantee you will enjoy the game more if you make the decisions that you want to make with conviction and confidence, because that's what FPL is all about. So here is my team for Game Week 6. I'm going to go through it in its entirety without having made a transfer, discuss the possibility of rolling, discuss the possibility of making transfers, 1, 2, 3 even, and also the possibility of using a wildcard. Now, again, I would love to know what you think about that down below, but I will be the one that makes the decisions and owns those decisions as well. So, in goal, I currently have Henderson. One of those where, again, by the way, I should just know, I probably will wildcard next week if I don't wildcard this week. So you can look at Henderson and say he's got Liverpool next week. Just get rid of him. Look to bring in a better goalkeeper. And yeah, I probably will. But for this week alone, it's not an awful fixture. I will just note that Everton, for everything they've been defensively, which is not very good, they have been pretty good going forward. And so I probably expect Everton to score here, especially considering it's at Goodison Park. But Henderson has been making a few more saves in recent games, and you just never know. So I don't necessarily mind having Henderson here against Everton away. It's not a fixture I look at. I desperately don't want to play him, but longer term, absolutely. I will be probably wildcarding over the next few weeks. Could even be this week, and I won't be having him on my wildcard. But this week alone doesn't feel awful if I need to have him. So Henderson will be staying for now, and fingers crossed he can pull out a 9-pointer like he did last week. The back three at the moment is Porro, Gabriel, Trent. So I've got all three of my premiums starting. I've got a little bit of fear around benching premiums because I've obviously benched Gabriel 2 weeks in a row for 2 goals against a lot of people's advice, but it was 2 difficult-ish away fixtures and I didn't expect clean sheets. That proved to be the case, but he's gone and got 2 goals as well. And also, I remember when I benched Porro a few weeks ago for Newcastle, it felt awful because the man is just so attacking. So I've got a little bit of fear about benching those premium defenders, especially with the goal threat and assist threat that all 3 of them have. I will start with Gabriel. I don't expect him to keep scoring. In fact, I don't expect him to score this week in 3 games in a row. That would be ridiculous, considering last year he scored 3 goals in the entire season. And the season before that, he scored 3 goals in the entire season. The season before that, he did get 5, but you're looking at a guy that will probably score a goal every 13 games based on what we have seen so far across his Arsenal career, maybe 10 games maximum. So for him to get 2 goals in 2 weeks is very unlucky if you benched him or didn't own him, and we're probably not expecting that to continue at that rate. However, Arsenal do appear to even more so be aiming for Gabriel. They're almost setting up, if you've not watched the games and you've just seen the fact that he scored, the rest of the Arsenal players are much closer to the goal, like inside and around the 6-yard box. And Gabriel, especially against City and Spurs also, was standing almost on like the penalty spot and just running. And Saka's whipping in the ball and Gabriel is just attacking it with such speed. So if that continues, maybe he'll get more like 6, 7, 8 goals this season. And so as a result, I do think Gabriel's a great pick. I'm obviously not going to bench him this week. And fingers crossed, now that I actually have him in my 11, he can go and get me another goal across the next few games. So really happy to have Gabriel. Trent is a player I'm delighted to have too. After the Wolves game, I don't really love the fixtures from a defensive perspective in terms of clean sheets. But I do think that Liverpool have been defending incredibly well now. 4 clean sheets. He's had the attacking return. He's got the assist threat. He's got a bit of goal threat as well, Trent. I can't see myself going without Trent on a wildcard. And I say that now, maybe due to my poor team value, I might struggle. But he just feels like a midfielder with the additional bonus of a clean sheet. He's getting forward that much and his attacking threat is that high. And you still expect a brilliant defence like Liverpool to keep clean sheets in difficult fixtures. No, I don't think particularly that a clean sheet against Chelsea, Arsenal or Brighton is particularly likely, given how good the 3 teams are that they're facing from an attacking perspective. But I equally don't think it's impossible, especially in those bigger games like an Arsenal. You could see there being a clean sheet for one of the 2 teams. So Trent will probably be staying for me for the foreseeable future. And at the very least this week, when a lot of people are wildcarding and they might be having to go for the likes of Robertson, if I can keep Trent in my team, it feels like a massive advantage there. So Gabriel and Trent, very happy with. Pedro Porro, I am very happy to play in this game. I'll actually be at Old Trafford, courtesy of tickets from Manchester United, which sounds crazy to say, but I'll be at this game watching Spurs versus Manchester United. And I don't actually own any Man United players, so it's nice to at least have an FPL player in that game, although I'll be hoping that he concedes from a personal perspective. But again, with Porro, it's not really the clean sheets that you own him for because Spurs don't really do clean sheets. I will just say Spurs' defence has been a lot better than people are giving them credit for. Not only this season, but last season, the defensive data was quite good. Vicario, I don't know what to make of him. Sometimes I look at Vicario and think you're one of the best keepers in the league, and then sometimes I think, what on earth are you doing? He's got this hesitancy that De Gea had when he first joined Man United, where it's just a bit chaotic. But generally, I don't expect a clean sheet in this game. Do I expect an attacking return? Not necessarily expect, but I think there's a possibility. And my other options are using a transfer, which feels like a bit of a waste at the moment. If I wildcard, I probably wouldn't start him. I might not even have him. Or I just play Robinson on my bench against Forest. But Forest have been attacking fairly well. And so I'm not sure that I necessarily think a clean sheet is that much more likely for Robinson than it is for Porro. And then when I look at attacking threat, yeah, they've both got attacking threat, but Porro's probably got slightly greater attacking threat. So I'd love to know in the comments, who would you start out of Porro and Robinson? But I'm feeling confident at the moment that I want to start Porro. I don't think there's much in it. I just have a bit more of a feeling about Porro getting an attacking return, especially against the United defence that, in all honesty, the parts of the pitch where we are at our weakest is in those defensive midfield roles. And I can just see Porro in that pocket between like a Dallo and if it's an Ugarte that starts, I can just see him finding a lot of space in that role. As a Man United fan, that's where I can envision us struggling a little bit. So for me, Porro's likely to be starting, but there is the temptation to start Robinson. And then I have Greaves, who I shouldn't be needing this week against Villa. So that's the goalkeeper and defence situation. No transfers planned at the moment. I'm pretty happy with it. Let's move on to the midfield. So guys, moving on to the midfield, and I'm actually, believe it or not, quite happy with it, despite what some people might think. So There are players here that, again, longer term, you probably don't want to have. I can point to two of them that I think a lot of people would look to move on very soon, maybe even 3 or 4. But for this week alone, considering if I don't wildcard this week, it would be next week, it's difficult to argue that they've got bad fixtures or that they are bad assets to have. So I'll start with Mohamed Salah. Obviously, if I don't look to wildcard this week, I will have Salah and not Haaland. And people will look at that and say, you are bonkers. Newcastle are arguably weaker defensively than Wolves. They've just shipped 3 goals to Fulham. Haaland is a better asset than Salah. All of that stuff rings true, by the way. And I agree. If I had the choice this week, I would rather have Haaland than Salah. And you can say, well, then why wouldn't you wildcard? When I'm ranked 3.5 million, and when I'm also looking for ways to just differentiate slightly, I don't think Salah is a significantly poorer option this week than Haaland for the armband. And not only are most people not going to be captaining Salah, I would say his ownership is going to be almost halved amongst engaged managers, because if you're wildcarding this week, which so many are, because basically I think every other content creator bar maybe one are obviously wildcarding, and a lot of people follow their advice. No one's going to have Salah, I don't think, because it's so difficult to squeeze him in on a wildcard. I think his ownership is going to be at an all-time low for this season. And he's playing against a Wolves defence that have been not only shipping goals, but they've now lost Mosquera for the season. And we know that Madueke at Molineux scored a hat-trick because they are so weak defensively, especially on that side. I just feel like this is a very good game for Salah. He didn't start against West Ham midweek. He came off the bench and got a goal. I am perfectly happy having a differential Salah captain, and it might not pay off. Again, it could be that Haaland scores a hat-trick, Salah blanks, and my rank drops from 3.5 mil to 5.5 mil, 6 mil. If it does, well, then the climb from where I'm starting is just going to be a bit of a bigger climb, and I'm happy to accept that. But I can't, in my right mind, not captain Salah against Wolves away as a bit of a differential. Like, it feels crazy to me that he's going to be that. So I'm actually really excited by that, and fingers crossed he can either match Haaland or potentially outscore him, which I know is quite unlikely. So Salah's absolutely fine this week. I do think, again, if I was wildcarding, I would lose him, which is one of the things that is stopping me from wanting to wildcard, because in my head, wildcarding out Salah against Wolves away, as well as maybe even Trent against Wolves away, it doesn't sit right with me. And another player that I now don't feel completely great if I were to wildcard out or even transfer out, because this was my planned transfer out, is Diogo Jota. So he completes my Liverpool triple up. And I think lots of people on wildcard might have only one, potentially even maybe less for some people, Liverpool assets given their fixtures. But Jota started against West Ham midweek in the Carabao Cup, as did Darwin, as did Gakpo. And obviously Diaz was on the bench along with Salah. So Diaz and Salah look extremely likely to start in Gameweek 6. And when I saw Jota start, I was like, I don't know what to make of this, because he's starting in the number 10 role. So he's not starting as the forward. And Darwin is. So immediately I thought that's not great that Darwin started as the 9 and Jota's playing in the role that Szoboszlai would usually play. However, Jota put in a brilliant performance, scored 2 goals, both of which were taken very well, and then he came off in the 59th minute. So he's got a brace and come off in the 59th minute. Darwin has played 90 minutes, he's had 0 shots in the entire game and only 1 assist. So I think based on the fact that not even that he didn't score goals, Darwin, but based on the fact that Darwin has started 2 games in a row, played 90 minutes midweek, Jota got 0 minutes at the weekend, played 59 minutes in the Cup. I think that is all pushing towards, as well as getting that brace and taking them very well, I think it's pushing everything towards a Jota start in Game Week 6. Some people might frame that as Jota's got 0 minutes followed by 59. He's a massive minutes risk. Just sell him. And again, if I was keeping this team long term, I would absolutely be looking to sell Jota. But I just want to delay the wildcard 1 week until Game Week 7. So holding a Jota that I think will start against Wolves feels like a good idea for me, I think, at the moment. Like, why would I waste a transfer taking out an asset that I think will start with a good fixture? And I think Mosquera being out only leans more towards Jota getting a start. Because I think if Mosquera is playing, he's a very, very, very physical defender. And I'm not saying Wolves don't have other defenders like that, but I feel like Mosquera would have bullied Jota a little bit, and they might have wanted to start someone like a Darwin who's more of a bulldozer up front. But I think Mosquera being out makes Jota an even more likely start for Liverpool from a footballing perspective, and obviously it makes him a stronger FPL option. So I'm not going to continue to justify it, because I know a lot of people won't like it, but the reason that I think I'm keeping Jota is based on what we know right now. I think he'll start. If he doesn't start, or if we get news he doesn't, or if I don't think he's likely to, and my opinion on this changes, maybe he becomes a doubt or whatever, then I absolutely will look to sell him. And I'll discuss in the next section some possible replacements for Jota. Just on the rest of the team, I have Bukayo Saka. He did start against Bolton and got reasonable minutes. I don't think he got an attacking return. Maybe he ended up getting like an assist or something. But generally, I'm not too fussed. Saka against Leicester at home is a fantastic player to own. One of the reasons, once again, that I'm not as keen to wildcard this week is I already have an Arsenal attacker and an Arsenal defender in place. I sadly don't have a third Arsenal asset, but the fact that I've got Saka in there feels pretty good to me. So Saka will be staying for me. I don't think I'll be giving him the armband. I just trust Salah a little bit more. I just think Salah is a better FPL asset. I think the fixture is marginally better for Saka because it's at home, but I think that Salah outweighs that by just being a better, more of a goal threat, I suppose, as well as an FPL option. So at the moment, Salah is my captain, Saka is my vice. Morgan Rogers, absolutely fine starting against Ipswich away. I've looked into wildcard drafts. If I was to wildcard this week, Rogers would be on my bench, which is another reason I don't feel great benching Rogers against Ipswich away, but the other strong options that I would choose would lead me to do so. So again, maybe Rogers becomes a slight differential given that a lot of people will be looking to bench him, and it's a good fixture. I actually think that, again, Ipswich away is probably better than Ipswich at home, in my opinion, because when they are playing at home, Ipswich, they go for it. They are not going to sit back and defend deep against Aston Villa at home. So I think there will be goals in this for Villa, and as a result, I'm very happy having Rodgers. And I even think on a wild card, I might still have Rodgers, by the way. Tyler Dibbling is very interesting for a cheaper price, but I just like Rodgers. He's got the minutes. He's playing for a very good team. Very happy to have him. The only player that I think there is definitely a conversation around not being as great this week is Eberechi Eze. And that's not because I don't think he's a good option, because I still have a bit of blind faith in him as a player, which I know a lot of people don't. That's absolutely fair enough. Like, different people look for different things. I look for strong eye test performances, of which there have been with Eze, and I look for really good underlying data in terms of getting chances and creating them. And I look for minutes. And in all of those things, Eze has them. I also thought this was a good fixture, and it probably still is against Everton because they haven't quite clicked defensively this season. But Jared Branthwaite may be back for game week 6. He played a game for the Everton under-23s or under-21s this week. Put in a very good performance, apparently. He looked pretty fit. I think he was playing right until the last second, so he's played a full game. Whether or not he is then available to play another full game for Everton at the weekend, I don't yet know. We'll have to wait and see what Sean Dyche says. But if Branthwaite's back in that 11, it makes them much stronger defensively. And all of a sudden, it doesn't look as great as a fixture. I would just say, just because Branthwaite's in the defence, it doesn't mean that now is an awful fixture. I know Everton kept a lot of clean sheets last year with Branthwaite, but it's still not. He's not like playing against like Man City or Arsenal. It's still a game where you would expect Palace to get chances. So I don't mind having Eze this week. As to whether I'll have him on a wild card next week, I'm a bit unsure at the moment, but I'm probably leaning no. So again, not a player that I would hold long term, but a player that I don't mind having for game week 6. So that's kind of the story of the midfield and the defence so far. And even when we look at the forwards, it will be the case as well. I'm not saying I want a lot of these players long term, but for game week 6, there is merit in so many of them. Like, again, just to recap, if I was to wildcard this week, I wouldn't have Jota. I wouldn't have Salah. Yes, I'd have Diaz instead, who's arguably a better option, I know, but I wouldn't have those two. I'd be benching Rodgers and I'd probably sell Eze. And whilst that might feel like upgrades because you'd get to bring in Semenyo and Burmo, I feel like I owe this team one more week. A lot of these players, I just feel like I'd be moving them on too early. So that's the midfield. Let's look at the two forwards and then what my plans are with regards to rolling transfers and possibly wildcarding. So guys, moving on to the front two, and again, I'm very happy with him. I'll start with Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin's actually gaining a bit of momentum on wildcard drafts from what I've seen. It's probably because João Pedro is a doubt, and I don't know at the time of me recording, which is, by the way, if I look tired, like 6 a.m. on Thursday. But I don't know if João Pedro is going to be available for game week 6. But if he's not, and you've already got Chris Wood and you need another cheap forward, I do think Calvert-Lewin will become increasingly popular just because he's got a home fixture this week. Then he goes into Newcastle, who defensively aren't particularly sound, Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton. Like, it is a really nice run of fixtures for Calvert-Lewin. And that was one of the reasons I brought him in, because I thought if I don't end up wildcarding, he's a really decent long-term option as well as a short-term one. Sadly, he blanked last week. But Crystal Palace at home is not a bad fixture. I know this causes a clash with my goalkeeper, and I accept that. That's not ideal. And again, you don't really want that if you can help it. But at the same time, Henderson could make lots of saves and Calvert-Lewin could score. I could come away with a 3 or 4 pointer for Henderson and a 9-pointer for Calvert-Lewin. And then in that situation, I'm pretty happy overall with the fact that I had the pair of them. So it's not ideal, but it doesn't always end up being the end of the world. So Calvert-Lewin, really happy to have him. As to whether he'll be on my wildcard next week, if that's when I choose to play the chip, I'm not currently sure. Probably, potentially. Depends how he performs against Palace. If he has a really quiet week again, maybe I look to go elsewhere. Maybe at that point, someone like a João Pedro or a Welbeck seems a little bit more appealing. But for now, Calvert-Lewin is absolutely fine. And then Ollie Watkins, along with Salah, is the main reason I'm looking to not wildcard this week. So I need a big performance from him. So if I was on a wildcard, I would not be having Watkins. And the reason for that is he's just so expensive to also squeeze in Diaz, Saka, Gabriel, Trent, maybe a Raya or a Saliba, all of these other assets. Like, you just can't squeeze all of them in, plus a Watkins. Even if your team value is insane, I think it would be very difficult, and you're probably sacrificing somewhere else. You've probably not got an 8th attacker, or you've got like 3 or 4 really cheap attackers where you're starting ones that maybe aren't optimal every single week. Like, you've got to start Rodgers every single week or something like that. So I just think for me, it doesn't feel right, again, activating a wildcard chip to remove Salah against Wolves, Watkins against Ipswich, Jota against Wolves. Again, I know I'm bringing in other good assets, but it just feels like it has the potential to massively backfire removing all these assets this week. And Ollie Watkins, for me, is probably the most underrated asset in FPL at the moment. He's had 10 big chances in the opening 5 weeks. Do you know who else has had 10 big chances in the opening 5 weeks? Erling Haaland. And yes, Erling Haaland has scored 10 goals. But Watkins is getting the same number of chances as a man that we are saying is the greatest goal scorer of all time. And I know that scoring goals and getting chances is very different, but I equally don't think Watkins is a bad finisher. And I think he showed last season that he can be clinical. And even at points this season, he's taken some of his goals very, very, very well. He's also missed chances, but I think Watkins is starting to find his form again and starting to find the fitness and the minutes. So having Watkins and Rodgers against Ipswich away, when lots of others, and I've seen tons of wildcards, don't have any Villa assets against Ipswich, it could go wrong if Ipswich keep them out, but I think that feels like a bit of a nice differential swing again. So yeah, Watkins and Calvert-Lewin, I'm actually really happy with as a front two. And on a wildcard, I might have had Haaland and Wood. And arguably, you could say that Haaland captain plus Wood is slightly better, but I think the pair of them are really, really solid. I've got Cannon on the bench at the moment. I have 3 million, so I could upgrade Cannon to then allow me to bench like an Eze or Rodgers, but I'm not sure that feels like the best use of a transfer. So this is the team as things stand for Game Week 6. So I'm going to move on to my possible options in the moment, which is basically transfer, roll, wildcard, and I would love to know what you would do down below. But as you can tell, I'm 90% sure at the moment I'm not going to be playing the wildcard, and I'll discuss why in the next section. So as I've started to allude to, I think I have 3 real options in terms of what I can do with my team this week, barring any obviously massive news that we get on Thursday or Friday that completely changes my plan, maybe forces me into a wildcard or forces me into using a transfer elsewhere. But I think it's basically use my 1 free transfer and then wildcard in Game Week 7, roll the transfer and wildcard in 7, and then wildcard this week because I'm absolutely petrified of Erling Haaland. And I say that as a bit of a joke, like I'm petrified of it, but that is literally the only reason I would wildcard here. Because again, I am fully aware that the likes of Mbeumo, Semenyo, Diaz, other assets, Chris Wood are all really good options this week. I just don't think they're significantly better than the options that I have. So the only reason I would wildcard is to bring in Erling Haaland. And some people will say just take a -4 to remove Salah and Watkins. I'm not taking a -4 to remove Salah and Watkins. That would be absolutely bonkers. I can't bring myself to do that. So really, like I said, the only reason I'd be wildcarding is for Haaland. So that is an option. But I am trying to encourage myself not to wildcard for one single player when I'm very, very happy with the rest of my team. So really, it probably comes down to use the free transfer and wildcard in 7 or roll the transfer and wildcard in 7. As to why I am looking to still wildcard in 7, I think my team from next week still doesn't look very good. I have at that point Eze and Henderson against Liverpool. I've got Robinson against Man City. I have only 2 Arsenal still, and I would ideally like to add a third at that point. I still don't have Erling Haaland. Like, there is enough going on for me that I just think in Game Week 7, not only do I still have these players that I've said, even like Diogo Jota long-term isn't a great asset. I do want to shift out Salah, probably to spread the funds. I just think at that point, I probably still do need the wild card. So it is just almost like shifting and delaying the wildcard by 1 week. I do think that when you are not very happy with your rank and you're trying to be a bit different, shifting the wildcard by 1 week is hugely risky because you lose out on loads of team value. And if the wildcard template smashes it, let's say Mbeumo gets a brace, let's say that Havertz, that a lot of people go for, scores a few goals, let's say Semenyo gets a goal and an assist. If all of those things happen and the likes of Eze and Jota all blank, I am in huge trouble. Because that is at that point probably like a 30 or 40 point red arrow I could be looking at, especially if Haaland also smashes it. But at the same time, if all of those or a lot of those assets that are heavily loaded up on wildcard are really disappointing, and or one or two of them pick up an injury, it might be that my Game Week 7 wildcard looks pretty different to a Game Week 6 wildcard. Because I was having this discussion with FPL Harry, funnily enough, and he was saying, I don't know why you'd wildcard in 7 rather than 6, considering that the Game Week 7 wildcard is going to look identical to the Game Week 6 wildcard. And my response to him was, how do you know that the Game Week 7 wildcard will look identical? Let's say, I'll use the example of James Maddison. I've been extremely impressed with James Maddison, and I would quite like him on a wildcard. If he's very, very impressive once again in Game Week 6, I will probably have him in my Game Week 7 wildcard. I've not seen him in a single Game Week 6 wildcard, at least not many of them anyway. And that's another player that could be a nice differential option. Let's say that Luis Diaz gets 60 minutes and doesn't score. I can guarantee a lot of people then would be looking at thinking, oh, I'd maybe prefer a Maddison to a Diaz. So that's only one very specific hypothetical example, but delaying a wildcard by 1 week isn't just losing out on team value and then having to wildcard into the same team everyone else has. It might be that at that point that I choose to differentiate in a few positions. So that can be a good reason to potentially delay the wildcard 1 week. And it might not work out for me, but I'm willing to experiment. And you will know on this channel, at the very least, I'm willing to not always do what everyone else is doing. And it feels like bloody everyone this week is wildcarding. So let's see how a wildcard in 7 goes. So yeah, I think I am at the moment 90% sure I'm wildcarding in 7. I think there is like an 8% chance I wildcard this week and they get a 2% chance that I delay it beyond Game Week 7. So in terms of what the transfer could be, it's just if I have any doubts around whether Jota starts or if I think his minutes will be so low that I might want to take a 1 week punt. We did discuss in previous videos though, 1 week punts don't really exist in FPL at the moment, considering that you can roll transfers through the wildcard, or you can carry them through. So let's say I don't use a transfer this week and I've got 1 free transfer. That means going into Game Week 7, I'd have 2 free transfers. If I then activate the wildcard, I would then go into Game Week 8, the week after I wildcard, still with those 2 free transfers. And why I think that's useful is for 2 reasons. Firstly, there is an international break between Game Week 7 and 8. So I think it'd be incredibly useful for me to have 2 free transfers to react to anything that happens in the international break. And also for everyone that wildcards in Game Week 6, unless they make a transfer in Game Week 7, they will at the very, very least have 2 free transfers for Game Week 8. And for some of them, that'll be as many as 3 or 4. I don't want to be going into Game Week 8, post-international break, already a week behind on wildcard with only 1 free transfer when other people are going to have 3, 4 to start reacting to new stuff. So I don't want to fall too far behind in terms of the flexibility to make transfers with my squad. So that's why I think rolling a transfer could be incredibly useful. But if I do decide to make the transfer, it probably is Jota at the moment. And there are some... I have the option to go like really, really, really differential with the transfer and just bring in someone that no one else is going to have because I only need them for 1 week. And I point to someone like a Martinelli or a Trossard. No one's going to pick those, or very few people are going to pick those in a wildcard because they're just not good long-term picks. It's not a good use of your Arsenal slot. But for me, I've got 1 Arsenal slot free. I'm looking to wildcard next week. Could Martinelli or Trossard go big against Leicester at home? They absolutely could. Same with maybe like a Savio or a Foden. Man City at the early kickoff, if we get news that Savio or Foden are starting, they could be a really nice option. So I could go for someone a little bit more like short-term like that and just a little bit more differential, almost for the sake of being differential. Or I just bring in an asset that has a good fixture this week that will be almost like a wildcard template option. And I look at someone like Semenyo, Mbeumo, Luis Diaz. I think all 3 of those will be extremely popular on wildcard. I mean, you can let me know down below, if you're on wildcard in Game Week 6, do you have all 3 of Semenyo, Mbeumo, and Luis Diaz? I think a lot of people will. So I could just choose to bring in one of them. Mbeumo stands out as the best option given that he's on pens, the minutes are great, he's got a home fixture. West Ham have looked so poor defensively. That does feel like an excellent transfer. But then if I'm targeting specifically the fixture ahead, it's probably like Semenyo against Southampton. So I'm not going to talk about it in too much detail because at the moment, because I think Jota starts, I'm less likely to want to make this transfer now. But I have 3 million in the bank. I've got lots of options there. I can't quite afford Cole Palmer, by the way, for those wondering. So it would be probably one of these 6, maybe chuck Phil Foden and Trossard into the equation as well. And yeah, that's currently what I'm considering at the moment. I'll just show you my AI recommended transfer. And by the way, you can still get these AI recommended transfers at the moment right now from Fantasy Football Hub. They recommend that I do Cannon to Wood. And this is another option. Like if I look at my team, it doesn't have to be a midfielder that gets sold. I could sell Cannon to Wood, but then I would be benching one of my midfielders. So that's the option you've got to weigh up in your mind. By the way, the 50% off sale, again, loads of people say it's like a DFS sofa sale where there's just 50% off forever. The 50% off sale, apparently, I say sale, it's not really a sale, is it? 50% off Fantasy Football Hub ends this week. So if you do want to get access to all of the insane stuff, and by the way, there's loads. You can see here, Opta stats, points predictions, fixture analyzer, player comparison, price changes, which are incredibly useful if you are on a wildcard and trying to work out which players to bring in and not bring in. You can see at the moment, Saka is predicted to rise in price tonight, as is Semenyo, so I will continue to lose value, but you can get access to that right now. There'll be a link down below. This is the final week to get 50% off, so I do advise you doing it this week if you do want to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. And yeah, it's a brilliant site. Check it out. They do support the channel a lot, so I do appreciate it. And so, yeah, let's go back to the team one final time. This is where I stand at the moment. I would say 60% likely to roll, 30% likely to make a transfer, and then 10% likely to wildcard. That is where I stand at the moment. But regardless, I'm feeling confident. We're making the decisions with conviction, and I'm looking forward to Game Week 6 and beyond. And if Haaland does absolutely destroy me this week, fair enough. I just had an absolute stinker, and I'm going to own Erling Haaland from Game Week 7 and beyond finally. So you can all stop saying in my comments, just get Haaland, bruv, because I will be doing that next week. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 6 team selection. Hopefully you did enjoy that video, and if you did, please do smash that like button. And if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. There is plenty more content to come this week, including 2 videos tomorrow and a deadline stream on Saturday. So make sure to subscribe for all of that. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.